Good day and welcome to Chamber Talk, the BVI Chamber of Commerce and Hotel Association TV program where you get more information about the benefits and activities of the Chamber. With me today, I have Mr. Clarence Faulkner, who will be telling us more about the pension plan or the multiple employer pension plan that is part of one of the benefits of the Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Faulkner, welcome.
Good afternoon.
So it was in 2012 that the Chamber came up with the initiative of creating a multiple employer pension plan. Tell us more about this initiative and how it works.
Well, I mean, initially when the Chamber embarked on trying to add additional services to their members, they put out an invitation to service providers to come up with a mechanism in order to provide a structural environment for companies to be able to manage their pension plans. And in doing so, our response was to create what is referred to as a multi-employer pension plan that provides a conduit for persons to have one universal set of governance documents and them having the ability to add persons or add their respective companies via what is referred to as a deed of adherence. With the deed of adherence, this provides some level of flexibility that makes their plan unique even though they're participating in one master structure.
Okay, and this was in response to a change in legislation. What was that change in the labor code?
Well, in the labor code, the one in 2010, Section 111 makes reference to retirement benefits. And what Section 111 refers to is, should companies not have any type of retirement structures, then they would be required to compensate individuals with retirement benefits once they reach the age of 65 and have a minimum of 10 years worth of service. What companies are now required to do is to establish programs that provide retirement benefits for their employees along with themselves. What the Chamber has now embarked on, along with ourselves, is to create this structure that enables companies to be able to adhere to the requirements of the code.
Okay, and this is more cost effective than if they were to do this individually as a company?
Yes, it is. I mean, the multi-employer plans provide the avenue whereby companies, be it a standalone individual, self-employed individual, to larger companies with anywhere from 100 to 300 employees. It doesn't matter the size. They're able to participate in the multi-employer plan and obviously pay the same benefits or pay the same registration fee.
Okay. Okay, so how would someone sign up for the plan?
In order to become eligible to join the plan, there is a one-page enrollment form to register with the BVI-CCHA and also to register with the BVI-CCHA multi-employer pension plan. Okay.
And with that, then, what's the next step?
The next step is for us to have a discussion with them in terms of what are their operational efficiencies. Because in designing the plan, what we want to be able to do is to ensure that the plan is customized specifically and complements the operational efficiencies of the respective company. It is our belief that gone are the days where there is one structure that everyone's just fit into.
No more cookie cutter.
And we use the term that we do not adopt a cookie cutter approach.
Okay.
And what we want to be able to do is, I think in prior years where companies felt that, you know, this is a large expense, we're simply just putting money into something and the employees are leaving with it. What we want to be able to do is to sit down and have a discussion with members or with companies, afford them the ability to explain to us what are some of their key issues, whether it's staff turnover, operational efficiencies, as I mentioned earlier, tenure with the company. We need to understand those things because every company is different.
Okay.
Once we know that and they register, then what we're able to do now is to prepare the deed of adherence specifically for them.
So it's basically, you know, my company where I might have just myself for now versus a company with, let's say, 10 employees.
Numbers doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, okay.
Numbers doesn't matter now.
And it grows with the company as the company grows.
Absolutely. Once the plan is established for the individual company, even if you start with 1 or 2 employees and you grow to 100, the particulars about your plan can remain the same. Now, if over the years you wish to change something, that can easily be modified by a resolution saying that I wish to hereby amend certain sections of the deed of adherence.
Okay.
If the Board of Trustees who governs the plan, which are actually members of the BVI-CCHA and the member companies themselves, they now create the opportunity to say, if we wish to change something about the master document, then that can easily be done by resolution as well.
Okay. So it's flexible, so to speak.
And that's the key. The key is flexibility, because you want to be able to afford persons and companies the ability to decide on something that is relevant to their operational efficiencies. I think outside of that, what you're doing is you're keeping them confined to certain rules and conditions that may not evolve as they evolve as an operation over time.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier in terms of persons, if we want to change companies, how does that work?
The master document of the multi-employer plans provide the term referred to as portability. And portability provides every member company the ability to not only move their assets between companies, but even between countries.
Okay.
So they have the ability to transfer their assets or their entitlement at that particular point in time to another approved plan. It doesn't necessarily have to be a part of the multi-employer. It can be any other plan. So be it here in the territory of the Virgin Islands or outside the territory.
Okay. So if I were to transfer to take a job with a company in the US,
Yes.
I would still be able to continue to make contributions to the same account.
Not necessarily to the same account.
Okay.
Simply because you're no longer with the company here, you're no longer in the jurisdiction, so it may not be the same account. Then obviously once you get onto the US mainland, then obviously you fall under ERISA, and the particulars in terms of the contribution towards a retirement structure there may be different.
Okay.
Now, the ability to transfer your entitlement from here to there,
Okay.
that is obviously applicable. However, there are several other things such as tax implications that you may want to consider before you do so.
Okay, as far in that regards.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I know one of the things when I was setting up mine, we talked about vesting. Explain that, what that is.
Vesting relates to the amount of time that an employee has to give the employer to be able to earn the employer's portion over time. And if we go back to the term that I use in terms of flexibility, the flexibility with designing a vesting schedule is essential, because if you have companies that are highly service oriented, those companies would wish to say, if an individual is being trained for a particular period of time, we would want to know that we're getting a level of production out of that person. So which means they may actually push the vesting period a little further out versus further in. And obviously you can see the ability to adjust based on the needs of the organization.
So I can decide, well, whether or not the contributions that the employer has made, that the employee can access them after a certain period of time, whether it's 3 years or 10 years with the company.
I think we have to be very careful when we use the term access,
Okay.
because many of the plans do not have withdrawal provisions other than retirement benefits.
Okay.
So access may be a little
Okay, so-
misinterpreted, but I would say they will not be vested, meaning that they have completed the time necessary that they now begin to earn what the company has put aside for them as well.
Okay, so let's say, for example, then, so we could be clear, that if I was to change employer
Yes.
below the threshold, would I be able to get the contributions that my employer made, or would I just be getting my contributions as an employee?
Well, there's two things here. The contributions are remitted to the plan, and the assets are invested. Once an employee decides they're going to leave, let's say, for instance, the vesting schedule for this particular company is 10 years. If an employee decides to leave at year 8, then what it affords the individual is they will receive the accumulated value of their entitlement at year 8 for their portion.
Okay.
Clearly, if the company says that you have to work for a full 10-year period, then they will not benefit from
those contributions. Okay.
Now, there are certain plans that we've designed that have staggered vesting schedule based on the amount of percentages over a particular period in time. Let's say, for instance, a company will say, from 0 to 5, we're not going to afford any individual anything. But from year 6 to year 10, we're going to incentivize the employee by saying, for every additional year that you've awarded us after year 6, you're going to earn 20% of what we've put aside. So in your example that you highlighted earlier, let's say, for instance, the company or the individual chooses to leave at year 8. Under that modified structure, what you have now is the ability for that individual to earn 60% of what the company has put aside, along with 100% in terms of what they have put aside.
Okay.
So it benefits them. In 9 out of 10 times cases, if an individual know that I've worked 8 years and I've earned 60% and I now need to work another 2 years to earn 100%, chances are they will reconsider staying unless, you know, they really have to leave.
Have to go.
They will reconsider staying the additional 2 years to earn the benefit. But what that also affords the company now is the ability or the opportunity not to recruit, retrain, rehire, and it saves them the costs in terms of not having to fill that position for an additional 2 years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we're trying to have a balance, so to speak, in terms of the benefits to the employer as well as the benefits to employees.
It has to. It has to. I mean, in these times, I think companies want to know that with a compensation package for individuals, they want to know that they are justly rewarded, number one. But I think the companies also want to know that they are fairly served by affording this individual these benefit packages.
Okay, so we know that this was a change in legislation in 2010. Yes. Let's say, for example, now I'm an employee and I am, let's say, 55 years. Who determines the retirement age? Does it correspond with the national requirement of 65? And, you know, again, because now I would not have been contributing for my entire employment with the company if I've been there, you know, from before. In terms of what would I get at my retirement in that last 10 years, how has that worked out?
Well, let me make sure I get the question correct. So you're 55 years old. You have never contributed to a program. There's been no program for you, and the company has now commenced.
Yes.
Well, Section 111, subsection 2 makes reference to past service in terms of an individual providing past service to the company. Provisions must be made for those years of service. So the company has the option to decide whether or not they're going to make retroactive contributions or provide contributions for those years of service prior to the establishment of the plan.
Okay.
Now, because if you're 55 and the vesting period is now either 5 years or 10 years, the retirement age typically uses 65.
Okay.
And 65 coincides with the labor code, it coincides with Social Security, and it also coincides with the national retirement age that has been established.
Okay.
So if it's 65, that person between 55 and 65 now have the ability to accumulate. But if the company now says, for the years of service that you've afforded us prior to 55, we're going to take that into consideration, then it doesn't really matter if you start at 55 versus earlier, because those years are not gone to waste, so to speak.
Okay. Right. So they'll be able to get some type of compensation.
That's assuming that the company decides that that's what they wish to do.
Okay.
And then obviously we will make sure that the appropriate language is drafted into the deed of adherence to comply. Okay.
And then they'll decide whether it'll be a percentage of, you know, I guess in terms of the salaries while they factor
the two approaches that we've seen is you can either use the contribution rate as agreed for the existing plan or the plan that is now created, or you can use the provisions of the code which makes reference in the absence of a plan.
Okay. So in terms of the plans that the companies would do, this is something that they would share with their employees and they should be aware of, or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We, in establishing plans for companies, one of the things that we tend not to do is to simply just say the company will come in and say, these are the provisions we'd like. Great. We typically ask for an audience with the employees before it is finalized, because I think, you know, I dare say employees are very sensitive in nature. And what you don't want is to have employees simply saying, you know, they just put this in place, we had no say in this, and they just pushed it down our throats. We take the opportunity to meet with them before the plan is finalized and perform what we call an orientation session. Okay. But the orientation session incorporates the whole matter of retirement and financial planning in addition to pensions. Because we want individuals to understand the holistic view and the role that pension plays in this combination. Okay. And then once we're able to do that, any specific questions or demands coming from employees, we're able to address them at that point in time. And if need be, we go back to the company and say, this is a concern your employees have. And if the company so wish to amend their documents based on the initial provisions, it affords them the ability to do so. Okay. And then we finalize. By the time we finalize, You have the employees with buy-in, you have the company with a buy-in, it's a matter of commencing.
Okay, and then it's enacted.
Yes.
So as far as the employee contributions, is that something that's mandatory, or it's up to the companies to determine whether or not they're going to require the employees sign up?
It's up to the company.
It's up to the company.
Because some companies will say, we will contribute for the employees. Some companies will say, we want the company and the individual to contribute to their own benefit in the future. And we also provide provisions where if an individual wishes to do more than the contribution amount in terms of voluntary amounts,
Okay.
they have the flexibility to do so as well.
Okay.
I should make it clear that in all cases, the voluntary amount is not required to be matched by the employer.
Okay. So I can contribute a different amount to what my employer
Yes.
is willing
Because
to
if
put
your employer says we'll do 3.5%, you are required to do 3.5%, and you decide I want to do 10%. Don't expect the company to match 10%.
to match another 10%.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good news, I think, for small businesses, especially because we know that the cost of doing business, you know, it increases all the time because of different requirements with legislation. So we're encouraging all businesses out there, again, whether you're just self-employed, the change in legislation in the 2010 Labor Code also applies to you. So it's important that, you know, you are also planning for your own retirement, I think, because I think sometimes we think that we can fall back on Social Security, not understanding that that's not 100%. In terms of saying if I was making $1,000, Social Security is going to pay me $1,000 a month. So we have to have a multifaceted retirement plan, so to speak, and this is what this is a part of. So again, for employees, if you haven't heard conversations in the office about a pension plan for your company, be sure to inquire. And again, employers, you know, encouraging you to sign up with the Chamber of Commerce. You can come by our office in the Tropical Building, Mondays to Fridays, 9 to 5, or call us at 494-3514 to get more information. Mr. Faulkner, any further information you'd like to give to our audience?
Certainly. For those larger companies who do not wish to, let's say, for instance, be a part of the chamber plan, there are different ways to customize specifically to their needs.
Okay.
The multi-employer plan provides, like I said, basically a turnkey solution with flexibility.
Okay.
And that affords those companies the ability to contribute and enjoy the benefits versus trying to do everything on their own.
On their own.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for your service in terms of, you know, contributing towards our retirement efforts. I think it's so important. And again, it's one of those operational expenses in companies that sometimes we kind of put on the back burner. But we need to make sure, you know, as part of the overall scheme of things, that we are taking care of our employees and making sure that we are being compliant with the law. That's also a key part. Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You're tuned in to Chamber Talk. I am your host, Vice President of Business, Shayna Smith, and we'll be right back after this commercial break.